Hi there, and welcome to this day in history for June 2nd. June 2nd is the 153rd day of the year in the Gregorian calendar, 154th in leap years, with 212 days remaining to the end of the year. Today's word is Chrysocracy. Chrysocracy. That means rule by the wealthy. The etymology of this word is from Greek, chryso, that means gold, and cracy, that means rule. Earliest documented use, 1828. A synonym for Chrysocracy is plutocracy. Kind of reminds me of one man's take on the golden rule. The guy with the gold makes the rules. That's what Chrysocracy is about. Yeah. And with that, we're going to start in the year 455, when the Vandals entered Rome and sacked the city for 2 weeks. We talked about this the other day, about why they would do that. On June 2nd, 1692, Bridget Bishop was the first person to be tried for witchcraft in Salem, Massachusetts. She was found guilty and later hanged. French philosopher, writer, and politician Marquis de Sade was born on June 2nd, 1740. He was sort of the Jeffrey Epstein of his day. Perhaps a little more open about his proclivities, though. He wrote voluminously about the things he did and about which he fantasized, to the point that sadism and sadist are derived from his name. He was so bad that he was incarcerated either in prison or insane asylums for 32 of his 74 years. Unlike Epstein, de Sade merely died in his sleep at the age of 74. This is the birthday of English composer and educator Edward Elgar, born June 2nd, 1857. Among his best-known compositions are orchestral works including the Enigma Variations and the Pomp and Circumstance Marches, to name just a couple.
Edward Elgar lived to the age of 76.
The Quartering Act was enacted on June 2nd, 1774. This was an act of the British Parliament that required local governments in the American colonies to provide British soldiers with housing and food. The colonists felt put upon about this. First of all, they didn't feel that they needed all these British soldiers to begin with, and then having to support them on top of that really became one of the so-called intolerable acts that led to the American Revolution. On June 2nd, 1835, P.T. Barnum and his circus set out on their first tour of the United States. Guglielmo Marconi applied for a patent for his wireless telegraph on June 2nd, 1896. This is the birthday of competition swimmer and actor Johnny Weissmuller, born June 2nd, 1904. He's best known for playing Tarzan in movies in the 1930s and 40s, and for having one of the best competitive swimming records of the 20th century. Johnny Weissmuller lived to the age of 79. On June 2nd, 1910, Charles Rolls, a co-founder of the Rolls-Royce Limited, became the first man to make a non-stop double crossing of the English Channel by plane. President Calvin Coolidge signed the Indian Citizenship Act into law on June 2, 1924, granting citizenship to all Native Americans born within the territorial limits of the United States. This is the birthday of American actor Stacy Keach, born June 2, 1941. He's usually played a detective and may be best known as Mickey Spillane's fictional detective Mike Hammer. Italians voted to turn Italy from a monarchy into a republic on June 2nd, 1946. I was surprised to learn that it was that late in history that happened. After this referendum, King Umberto II of Italy was exiled. No more kings, and get out while you're at it. On June 2, 1953, Queen Elizabeth II was crowned Queen of the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and her other realms and territories, and head of the Commonwealth. It was the first major international event to be televised. Louis Monge was executed in Colorado's gas chamber on June 2nd, 1967. He was a really creepy dude and had been convicted for mass murder, but that's another story, perhaps for another time. It's a really ugly story. The real story today, though, is that he was the last inmate to be executed before an unofficial moratorium on executions began in the United States in 1972. That moratorium, by the way, came to an end in 1976. Another tornado outbreak on June 2, 1990, known as the Lower Ohio Valley Tornado Outbreak. This one spawned 66 confirmed tornadoes in Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, and Ohio, and killed 12 people. On June 2, 1997, Timothy McVeigh was convicted on 15 counts of murder and conspiracy for his role in the 1995 bombing of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. He was executed 4 years later. And I think that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for watching. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share this video with a link in your email, messaging, or social media. If you enjoy this series, you can check out the playlist that contains these videos. I'll put a link to that in the description. That description lives on YouTube, so for other platforms, I'll include a link to my blog page that is called No Really. You can also find me on Rumble, Parler, BitChute, and Getter. All those links in that description. Alrighty, that's all I can think of right now. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.